finding it, though. That's not the hard part. It's letting go.
To quote everyone on the planet, Fallout New Vegas is the most outstanding piece of media to ever grace the earth. It effortlessly triumphs over the likes of Citizen Kane, footage of the moon landing, and even reruns of Dog the Bounty Hunter. Of course I kid, not everyone shares that thought, and certainly not to that feverish degree. Still, that sentiment gets a lot of airplay if conversations around the franchise are any indicator over the last few years. It's tricky to argue with. It's a fantastic game whose stories, world building, choices, and writing are endlessly enjoyed and dissected from new and exciting angles to this day. One of my favorite examples of New Vegas' brilliance is its first expansion, Dead Money. It's easily the most polarizing add-on brought to the series, but it's worthy of a deep dive and serves as a perfect illustration of why the Fallout world is such a rich and fertile soil, for which the fruits of engrossing, beautiful storytelling may be born. With this video, I want to dive in and provide a definitive breakdown of its story, world, characters, gameplay, and everything else, and try to come out the other end with a complete understanding so we can truly appreciate it, warts and all. Failing that, at least you'll know why you hate it. If you haven't already and you enjoy this content, consider subscribing and leaving a like. If you don't, I'll make sure that you're forced to talk to the attendant every time you go to pump gas. Plus, it goes a long way in helping get this out to more people who may enjoy it too. Also, consider checking out my videos going through each of the Fallout 3 add-ons. And with that, let's jump right in, starting with its conception. Development for Dead Money began at Obsidian Entertainment shortly after completing New Vegas, and was headed up by Chris Avellone. It was released just 2 months after the base game's launch. From the outset, Dead Money was conceived as a short story in the Fallout universe, an adventure story, and a casino heist with a post-apocalypse spin. A forum post by Chris Avellone has him detailing the design decisions and thinking behind Dead Money, saying that his conception had a slightly different goal. Quote, "We didn't set out to make Dead Money a survival experience. We set out to make a horror game that puts survival second. In terms of horror, I don't feel we succeeded, although it was a conscious effort to try and shake things up a bit with the enemies you face to scare the player, definitely." End quote. Development steered into a more survival-focused adventure because, quote, "the post-Wasteland's gotten more civilized as a decade since the nuclear war have gone on. I miss being in a situation where I'm scrounging for every last bullet. Water's precious, and I have to fight tooth and nail for any edge I can get." So the Sierra Madre and its surrounding villa were designed as a reminder that some sections of the wastes are still scary, hazardous places where few can tread and survive. End quote. Building off the survival aspects and introducing new environmental hazards and dangers has polarized many players. Some embrace the new direction and unique experience for Fallout New Vegas, as Dead Money was an earnest attempt to shake things up and provide tense, exciting emotions that just can't always be felt in the base game. Others claim the difficulty and puzzles were more annoying than engaging. As for the story, Chris Avellone says, quote, "Narratives in games should be entertaining first, and also have a theme when possible. I wanted to make sure that despite the survival elements and the adventure story elements, there's still something larger being told beneath the DLC's surface, for people who care to delve into it." End quote. Regardless of how you feel about Dead Money, about the thinking that went into its development, one thing that comes up is how well received the story and world were. The story of the Sierra Madre's creation, its transition from opulent monument to pre-war ideals to haunted folklore legend after the bombs fell, and how it corrupted the minds and hearts of all involved, is deeply fascinating. Dead Money's atmosphere and themes were heavily inspired by films such as The Treasure of the Sierra Madre and Cube. The former features a group of treasure hunters seeking fortune and turning on each other. The latter is considered one of the key parts of Dead Money's design. An Easter egg for Cube's director, Vincenzo Natali, I hope I pronounced that right, is seen in the title of a film that Vera Keyes was famous for starring in pre-war. And with that, let's get into the gameplay. Dead Money starts as players receive a mysterious radio signal on their Pip-Boy. Tuning in, you hear a woman's voice calling any willing wanderers to the Sierra Madre. In this paradise, they can begin again. Stepping through its gates is to wash yourself of your past life, its worries, its fears, its uncertainties, and be reborn. Welcome to the Sierra Madre. The signal is broadcasting from an abandoned Brotherhood of Steel bunker. Going there, what looks like an unassuming hole in the ground, becomes a portal to untold horror and lands beyond your wildest nightmares. The door leading in warns that heading to the Sierra Madre with a character less than level 20 is not advised, letting players know that this expansion is not going to pull any punches, aside from all the ways it does. You can turn back now if you wish, waltz back to the Strip, to civilization, gamble your life away and deal with geopolitical power struggles, and keep your sanity intact. Only the most courageous and motivated souls need apply. Where some see courage, others see delusion. Where some see motivation, others see debilitating obsession. At the end of the hall is a radio singing the same song. The Sierra Madre is waiting, as is the new you. As you approach the radio on the table, a trap is sprung and gas belches from the vents, knocking you unconscious. A disembodied voice narrates the opening movie, giving you a brief rundown of the Sierra Madre being an irresistible relic of the past, frozen and untouched, whose promise of treasures has led many hunters to their doom. You wake up lying near a fountain in the center of a dying city, beneath a blood-red cloud, sniveling at the feet of the Sierra Madre casino as it looks down on you. I'll save the narrative discussion for a little bit later. For now, I want to talk about the environment and the gameplay. You start in the villa, scared, alone, and left to fend for yourself. A wicked and mysterious concoction has painted the world a poison red. Due to the resort's advanced security, there was no way for you to arrive at its gates with all of your gear in hand. So you are allowed nothing more than some tattered garbs to cover your shame, and mercifully, a specially designed energy weapon gifted by your captor to aid you in your adventure. The hollow rifle is one of the new weapons available during your stay at the Sierra Madre, and has the unique ability to slow down its targets when it strikes. It must be used sparingly at first, as ammunition is limited and its condition is poor. It will hold you over, protecting you from the enemies, until you find a more sustainable option, such as the knife spear, police pistol, or gas bombs, whatever your character is geared for. The weapons added with Dead Money are few but impactful. They include the police pistol, a stubby little revolver that offers a decent punch and ammo that's easy to get a hold of. The automatic rifle is the most powerful automatic weapon in the game on a per-shot basis. Still, it is wildly inaccurate and comparatively easier to break than any other rifle weapons. If you prefer more personal damage doers, there's the Cosmic Knife, a steak knife formed out of a whiz-bang new alloy created by the fellas at the Big MT Research Center. And that's not the only thing that contributed to the Sierra Madre. The knife spear is a stick with a bunch of those cosmic knives strapped to the end. There's also a bear trap fist, which takes the raw destructive force of a power fist and replaces its high technology with a literal bear trap. Variations and modifications for each weapon are featured, but those are the base weapons on tap for the expansion. You'll need to utilize every tool available to make it through the horrors of the Madre. The villa was built as a private city to house the guests and staff of the Sierra Madre resort. The streets were meant to be traversed only on foot, as no cars were allowed to enter for fear their noise and pollution would unsettle the paradise Sinclair was trying to build. It's divided into 5 distinct districts: the town square, the hub for all the other areas. The medical and residential districts are exactly what they say they are. Then there's the Salida del Sol and Puesta del Sol, representing the east and west wings of the villa, and means sunrise and sunset in Spanish, respectively. Sunrise being on the east, sunset being on the west. Every area shares the same Spanish architectural cues. The only immediate difference is the color of the gas eating away at them. The town square, medical, and residential districts all feature a red cloud. Salida del Sol is shaded purple, and Puesta del Sol is cast in yellow. Aside from that, they are mostly identical in appearance. Given the impressively short development time and small budget afforded to the team building this expansion, I'm not surprised that the environments on tap lack variety. Still, you would like to see more separation between areas than a simple color change. It drives up the horror aspects that the city feels like a confusing maze where you are never too confident in where you're at, and every wrong turn is instant death. However, in terms of feeling like the lands you're exploring consistently keep your attention, it has to rely on the hazards and traps to do so, instead of the environment itself being distinct and satisfying. While the casino was handled by a reputable company, sparing no expense, the villa, in contrast, was poorly constructed by a cheaper, more corrupt builder to avoid a ballooning budget. Buildings and structures in the villa were considered wildly unstable and could collapse overnight. What they spared in monetary expense, they ended up paying for in human cost. Accidents and setbacks were frequent but covered up. By the events of Dead Money, the villa sits, decaying, as a desolate, ruined town populated by the mysterious ghost people. Everything throughout the haunted streets and halls of the villa and the casino wants to kill you. The air, the sounds, the locals, everything. And you can't always kill them back, daring you to consider your strategy at every turn, as every hazard requires a different way to be overcome. Dead Money forces you to be present and consider every move you make. At times, the gameplay can be frustrating and tiresome, but in my experience, it was more often engaging and exciting. Risk and reward is the mantra walking with you every step of the way. Puttering off into the unknown corridors of the villa, you are subjected to the Cloud. This mysterious toxic gas has fully engulfed the resort, eating away at all it touches. When playing in hardcore mode, the Cloud will constantly chip away at your health, bringing you close to death but never killing you. No matter what perks, clothing, or strategy you deploy, it is all futile beneath the Cloud. Concentrated pockets can be found throughout your travels and will kill you if exposed for too long. The only protection is through a perk given by one of the companions who allows you precious extra moments before the Cloud starts to chomp away at you, along with reduced damage. Terminals are planted around the villa that can activate the ventilation systems and remove some of the dense pockets from your way, but otherwise encountering the Cloud means weighing the cost and taking a calculated risk to stroll into a choking abyss, hoping that it pays off. As a reward for making the trip to the Sierra Madre, your captor has latched a bomb collar to your neck to ensure your cooperation. A handful of others are in the same boat, and the collars are linked. If one goes off, they all go off. This is the thin barrier keeping the social contract intact, despite the corrupting force of the Madre calling on treasure hunters to betray their fellow man and plunder its secrets. No, we'll have to work together to make this work, even if it takes the threat of violent, explosive death. The collars came with an unintended side effect, though, in that they are affected by the wayward signals of radios sprinkled throughout the villa and casino. Remaining near one of the radios will cause your collar to beat faster and faster until finally it erupts, taking your head with it. The only way to avoid having your mind blown is to deactivate the radio that's emitting the signal, or steer clear of the area the radio is in. Sometimes the radio is a tabletop set that can be simply switched off at the press of a button, but they can also be a wall-mounted speaker in damaged and shielded forms. Each style is denoted by the color of its light. Damaged speakers can be wrecked with a ranged weapon, while shielded speakers cannot be destroyed and must be avoided unless a nearby terminal controls it. When your collar starts ticking, you must be quick and tactful to find the source of the interference and be ready to deal with whatever form it takes. There is a bit of trial and error sometimes when encountering a new area that has a radio, but otherwise it's an exciting and fun challenge. Before the war, the Sierra Madre was outfitted with holograms to care for security and hospitality in lieu of humans in many cases. As projections rather than simple physical entities, they are invulnerable to direct damage. The surface holograms can act in several roles and take many shapes. Vendors, greeters, and even the starlet Verakes can be represented in glorious blue light. These non-hostile versions will interact with the player, allowing him to do things like trading goods or gambling. The security holograms are a totally different story. They take on the appearance of actual Sierra Madre security forces. They are tasked with keeping the peace and enforcing order around the villa and casino. The Sierra Madre security has been stuck on high alert since the bombs fell and will treat anyone they see as an invader. Engaging in combat with a security hologram is a losing fight. In some cases, terminals can change the hologram's patrol pattern, letting you sneak past them unseen. Still, your only hope of getting rid of one for good is to find and scrap its emitter. However, it's often well hidden, further reinforcing Dead Money's insistence on intentionality of exploration and environmental mindfulness. Between the clouds, the radio, and the holograms, you are forced to drive headlong into a hell that needs a more deft approach than sheer brutality. Each adds its own flavor of tension and stress to the gameplay, requiring a puzzle-solving mentality to be overcome. Some may find them to be tedious and annoying to deal with, but I find myself appreciating the way they ask you to negotiate your strategy differently than the base game does. From the rhythm of tension and release when walking into a room, hearing your collar click and clatter, only to take a prayer shot at a speaker across the room, to the uncertainty of walking into the cloud, unsure where it leads as your vision is reduced to nearly nothing. Into the butthole puckering fear of seeing a hologram wandering a hallway and desperately trying to sneak around them while searching for their transmitter, are all exhilarating, satisfying, and welcome challenges unique to Dead Money. Nothing is mindless at the Sierra Madre. And that's to say nothing of the traditional traps laid across the city by the others who have come seeking fortune only to be corrupted and consumed under the cloud and the denizens lurking therein. Bear traps, landmines, and grenade bouquets suspended by wire from the ceiling are just as dangerous as anything else. Virtually nowhere is safe, or at least you can never be sure. This is survival horror. What makes the dangers exponentially more terrifying is that falling victim to one can be devastating, as healing items are limited. You may be able to withstand a trip into the cloud, but recovering afterwards means using precious items. The mental calculus is entirely different here. In the Mojave, civilization has begun to establish itself once again. Competing factions are not squabbling like barbarians over scraps. They are massive forces legislating trade deals and organizing labor and logistics to feed hundreds of connected settlements. Their problems are more complex than meeting the basic security and physical needs of a society. They stem from asserting political influence and dominance over one another. Meanwhile, at the Sierra Madre, we are dragged back into the muck of the apocalypse. Nothing comes easy here. It gives you a new appreciation for every bit of food or medicine you find. There aren't lavish restaurants or well-tended farms to feed you, only leftover crumbs from before the war to nibble on. Coming across a first aid kit is met with an audible sigh of relief, at least at first. This is where Dead Money has missed an opportunity to fully embrace its desire to be a survival horror experience that pulls no punches. It could have been so much less forgiving, more immersive, and authentic to its intentions. Despite the hopeless feeling wafting off every surface of the Sierra Madre, your worries are over once you find the vending machine code for stim packs in the clinic. See, the vending machines are dispensers. The technology behind it is unknown, but they are seemingly capable of limitless production of food, supplies, ammunition, or anything else. All one needs to take advantage of this are the right amounts of chips and the machine's instructions, which are holotapes found pretty much everywhere. Chips are plentiful and can be nabbed from the countless fountains and tables of the villa and can be wagered at the casino later on in the expansion. This trivializes the need for scavenging after you get enough chips, because if you're diligent enough, you can amass quite the coin purse before long. Stim packs are reasonably cheap, and it's not crazy to have dozens stocked up within an hour or so of starting Dead Money. Of course, you can roleplay as someone who refuses to accept the invaluable support of the vending machines, but I wish Dead Money fully embraced its potential to make survival a very present and engaging challenge. It's absolutely more prominent than in the base game, but it's not nearly as much as it could have been. Knowing that Dead Money was initially designed to be more punishing, this change was likely made after playtesting revealed it was more frustrating than rewarding for players. A compromise could have been made though to keep the normal mode as a forgiving, casual experience like we get now, while at the same time, players who chose to play on hardcore mode can be treated to the more cruel, punishing game that was originally planned. The quests are extremely linear, requiring you to follow each instruction precisely with very little wiggle room. The choices available to the player are admittedly limited. Each character you meet has multiple endings as their conflicts are resolved, and none of them can be interacted with beyond dead money. Their fates are settled in a slideshow after the story wraps up. The main story can be completed in slightly different ways depending on how you deal with Father Elijah at the end. Ultimately though, the narrative is set in stone, and it's just up to the player to uncover it. As a fan of Fallout and the usual offering of choice with these games, I should be furious that there is so little of that, but somehow I'm not. I appreciate the developer's approach in designing Dead Money as a game short story, whose narrative, world, and scope were tight, focused, and admittedly rigid. If it's not your cup of Nuka-Cola, the environment and tone of the expansion can feel like an unending march through a boring hell, especially when you constantly have to deal with radios, holograms, and the cloud, all competing to kill you first. Variety is a scarce resource around these parts, so you had better like what you see because it's all you get. Fortunately for me, I am a sucker for the dark, melancholic vibe of Dead Money and the Sierra Madre. And so with that, let's explore that more, give the moodiness some context, and dive into the story, because it's honestly the best part of this whole ordeal. When you wake up at the Villa Fountain, the first face to greet you is Father Elijah, whose holographic projection fills the air. He has strapped a collar to you and expects you to help him achieve his ultimate goal, which is obtaining the treasures of the Sierra Madre so that he can use what he finds to finally dismantle the NCR and rule the wasteland with an iron power fist. Baby steps for now though. It all starts with a good old-fashioned casino heist. At some point he realized he couldn't do it by himself, and you are not the first person he's captured. The old man has set up traps intended to incapacitate any treasure hunters looking to cash in on the stories they've heard about the Sierra Madre. Father Elijah has tried with many groups of wastelanders to break into the casino, but they are often not up to the task as they succumb to the dangers or turn on one another. Throughout the villa, you can find the bodies of the fallen hunters along with their final thoughts scrawled on walls or bits of paper. Some of them tried to help anyone who might come after them with valuable tips or caches of supplies. Eventually though, everything falls beneath a cloud, and Elijah's need for more captive help continues. The Sierra Madre was built by a man named Frederick Sinclair as a gift to his love interest, the starlet Farrah Keys, to be the most extravagant resort in the West, had it ever opened. The Great War tore the world apart before it could celebrate its grand opening gala event, and the mighty Madre was frozen in time. The state-of-the-art security system locked itself down, hermetically sealing its doors so no one could escape. Its security hologram sparked to life and slaughtered everyone inside. The doors remained closed hundreds of years later, leading to Father Elijah needing to employ his tactics to access it. Sometime after the Great War, the ventilation system failed, and strange toxins spilled out into the air, blanketing the city in a sinister red cloud that proved lethal to anyone who dared explore the ruins. That is, if they could even find the Sierra Madre, as it was hidden from view and tucked away deep in the mountains, allowing it to take on a mythical status among prospecting folks. Only an enigmatic group called the Ghost People survived to call the city home. While not much is known about the Ghost People, it's shown that they were victims of Frederick Sinclair's deal with the scientists of the Big Empty, who offered their advanced tech in exchange for letting them experiment on the inhabitants. So for every cosmic knife or magic vending machine they were given, there was also a deadly cloud of poison or confining hazmat suit claiming the lives of many. The cloud appeared when the villa's cheap ventilation system backed up, causing the workers to vomit and choke. The lab coats at the Big Empty sent their specialized suits to combat the cloud, but the workers found them incredibly stiff, rigid, and hard to move and talk while wearing. When exposed to the cloud, the locks of their suit had corroded, trapping them as the toxins seeped inside. They were forced to cut themselves free using steak knives. The maintenance crews who donned their hazmat suits and were unable to escape had fallen victim to the cloud, mutating and becoming the violent, savage guardians of the Sierra Madre, known as Ghost People. The Sierra Madre attempted to send out a distress signal on the day of the war, but the system was hooked up to the gala event to broadcast adverts for the casino, so help never came. The mysterious voice over the radio that lured us to the Sierra Madre was meant to be a cry for help, but it leaves its lips as a cheerful commercial. In the present day, in-game, the Sierra Madre heist demands we round up the other captives and use them as our team to gain access to the legendary resort. They include the former world-famous lounge singer, back when there was a world to be famous in, Dean Domino, the mystifying mute Christina Royce, and the psychological wonder super mutant Dog and God will serve as our motley crew of misfits during our adventure. Depending on your interactions with each of them, will determine their outcome. Together, we must trigger the gala event, which is required for the casino to open its doors. Once inside, we must unlock its secrets and enter the vault where the treasure lies. The plot on a spreadsheet is rather simple, casino heist. However, it's everything surrounding it that creates the brilliant, fascinating charm of Dead Money. The drama playing out between the characters, both pre-war and as the events take place before us, provides some of the most rewarding and intriguing storytelling that Fallout has ever been graced with. The relationship between Dog and his split personality, God, the warring personalities rage back and forth to control the Nightkin shell. One side is fueled by insatiable hunger and pure instinct, and the other by the need for control and independence. The relationship between Father Elijah and the Sierra Madre, a man whose obsession with tearing the NCR asunder and seeing the Brotherhood of Steel reacquire dominance, has led him to the doorstep of the most guarded treasures in the wasteland. The relationship between Christine and Father Elijah, a woman the Brotherhood of Steel ordered to track down one of their former leaders, but the pursuit is personal as he's also responsible for breaking her away from her partner. The relationship between Frederick Sinclair and Vera Keyes, a man desperately in love with someone and who has the means to move heaven and earth to keep his love safe, even after that someone colludes to take everything from him. These relationships make Dead Money exceptional, further driving the themes the expansion sought to explore. So let's dive into each one a little bit deeper, starting with the dichotomy of Dog and God. We first meet Dog and God at the police station. Once part of the Master's unity, they now walk the earth as two sides of the same psychologically fractured super mutant Nightcoin. Their mind is torn between two warring identities, known as Dog, a subservient and brutish entity driven by ravenous, indiscriminate hunger, and God, the voice of reason desperately trying to rein control of Dog and protect him from himself and the people he shouldn't listen to. Like the rest of the mutant army, the Nightkin, who would later become Dog and God, was psychically linked to the Master and conditioned to serve slavishly until death. However, following the destruction of the Mariposa military base and the cathedral, they found themselves cast into the wilderness with no direction as their mind began to deteriorate. Father Elijah took advantage of Dog's obedience, slotting himself in as his new master, much to God's resentment. As the years passed, Dog constantly got into trouble, wandering, eating, and listening to the wrong people. Once he starts to feed, anyone or anything that Dog hunts will be crushed, mangled, and twisted until he is satiated in an act of uncontrolled greed. He knows what he does is wrong, but simply can't help himself. Eventually, the voice of reason couldn't stand him endangering himself and began to emerge to counter Dog, who in response began self-mutilation, finally going so far as to carve the name Elijah gave him on his chest to remind himself who he was. The pain, as excruciating as it was the only way Dog could quiet the voice raging within him. However, as time passed, the other voice became stronger and stronger. Consequently, it took more and more pain to stifle God's identity. Hunger would drive Dog to the surface and allow him to assume control, but God would reemerge when he was fed or tired. It's unclear which identity came first, which is the original, or if they are just aspects of a complete personality that broke into its individual parts. Dog does not think of God as being part of himself, referring to it as a voice climbing into his head and being mean to him. In reality, the other identity is only trying to protect him, but that proves to be a losing battle as Elijah, in a world of temptation, keep enabling and encouraging Dog's gluttony. Both would grow to present the suppression of the other being in control, each referring to the other putting them in a cage or basement. While in the cage, each identity would only perceive glimpses of the other's actions. This had the effect of allowing them to keep secrets from one another. This, however, is both a gift and a curse. For while it helps keep strategic ignorance, it also exacerbates the animosity between the two. God is calm, articulate, and controlling. He seeks to eliminate Elijah to free himself from the need for a master and eliminate his greedy, ravenous hunger. In contrast, Dog aims to eliminate the God personality, so that he may become pure instinct and gorge himself on his master's affection and food. He's a big plus to have during combat. God is not nearly as helpful when violence is needed. Still, he can use his reasoning and intellect to solve other problems. The final encounter with Dog and God happens when we access the Sierra Madre. As soon as the team enters, the state-of-the-art security incapacitates our team and scatters them to the different sections of the casino. Dog and God are sent to the Cantina Madrid kitchen. Dog has released an explosive gas into the room and threatens to ignite it, believing it to be the only way to get the voice to stop barking at him. He must burn it out, even if it kills him. Death is a more palatable solution than having to endure the struggle for control. The player has the option to decide the fate of Dog and God. You can simply kill the super mutant, putting him out of his misery in a violent fashion, or through dialogue, convince Dog to remove his collar, also killing him. You can enable either of the personalities to kill the other, depending on which one has favored you throughout your journey. With a high enough speech skill, you can force them to merge and become an entirely new entity. While the main quest doesn't provide many meaningful moral choices to weigh in on, this decision on Dog and God does give some meat to chew on. Leaving Dog alive and killing God will see the beast of pure instinct let loose on the world. Like a hurricane of gnashing teeth and tearing hands, entire communities will vanish overnight as Dog wanders the wasteland with nothing to slow down his hunger. Leaving God alive and killing Dog will see the voice of reason prevail. He will begin to tend to the ragged scars inflicted on him, slowly healing as he considers his next step. Briefly, he'll entertain the thought of staying at the Sierra Madre, but thinks better of it, deciding it's a monument to humanity, something he no longer needs. He will enter the wasteland in search of more like him. If you choose to merge the two personalities, a new voice will emerge without memory of the Courier or Sierra Madre. The super mutant shell is allowed to begin again, even if the slate is wiped clean of its history of everything that brought it this far and made it who it was. Each identity is ridden by greed, one for hunger, one for control. The Sierra Madre is a mirror for humanity's darkest tendencies. But the only time Dog or God can see the other for what they truly are is when the light goes out on them both. The wall between them crumbles when they're killed, when they're freed. And now on to Father Elijah. Father Elijah was once an esteemed Brotherhood of Steel elder, but has fallen out of favor with the group after the fall of Helios I to the NCR. His ascension to the rank of elder, the head of a Brotherhood chapter, was an uncommon one. As a scribe, he focused on creating and keeping a record of the technology the Brotherhood had acquired. Typically, a paladin, someone whose job is to be the sword and shield protectors of the Brotherhood of Steel, will assume the role of elder. It's unheard of that a scribe would reach that high. However, Father Elijah's uncanny genius for understanding and manipulating technology made him a unique case. Unlike other scribes, his approach was to improve and iterate on the things he encountered, not just preserve them. That philosophy and his unpleasant leadership style led to the other elders sending him east to the Mojave. Elijah expected unquestioned loyalty and subservience from those under him. Veronica was one of the only people he maintained any sense of rapport or relationships with, and she followed him to the Mojave. Veronica can be a companion to the courier and still hold some reverence for Father Elijah, not knowing that he was the reason she was forced to leave her lover, Christine, who is coming up next. The Hoover Dam was deemed to possess incredible tactical value for the Mojave, but was claimed by the NCR before the Brotherhood could stake it for themselves. Instead, Elijah turned their focus to the Helios 1 solar power plant. He was convinced that the Archimedes weapon was the key to swaying the tide of war in their favor. Before they could secure it and make it functional, the NCR overran the perimeter and took the facility. Father Elijah then wandered off into the wasteland without warning to his Brotherhood comrades. They assumed he deserted them, when in reality he hadn't. Dedicated as ever, Elijah went rogue, but swore to himself to bring the Brotherhood back to dominance after he wiped the new California Republic off the map. All he needs to do is find the proper technological advantage. His search had led him across the wasteland to places like the Big Empty, where he met Ulysses and was pointed towards the Sierra Madre. When he arrived, it was everything he hoped it would be, untouched by the outside world, being preserved by the cloud, and overflowing with the powerful pre-war tech. Father Elijah knew if he could harness its potential, he could single-handedly control the world. His ultimate plan was to cleanse the Mojave with the cloud and create a new world under his rule, using the holograms for defense, the collars to ensure compliance, and the vending machines for resources. However, Elijah needs help unlocking the casino's vault secrets. The Sierra Madre has promised him his deepest desires, and no matter how many trials, bodies, or tribulations it takes to redeem them, he will not be deterred, even as his obsession destroys him. The courier and the crew we deal with in Dead Money were not the first group that Father Elijah has gotten to trigger the gala event and enter the casino. It happened once before, but as soon as the team realized they could actually obtain the treasure, they turned on one another. After their deaths, Elijah was trapped and alone, unable to reach the outside world, until we came wearing a Pip-Boy 3000, allowing him some way to communicate. He would have been free to leave if only he could accept letting go of the Sierra Madre and the promises it made him. Obviously, he couldn't. Elijah led us through the villa, into the casino, and eventually into its vaults before revealing himself. It's possible to side with him, joining forces to dominate the wasteland, but this ends the game prematurely. It's more of a neat nod to players who want the option to take the evil route, a la Fallout 1. Otherwise, the quote normal endings see the courier ending Father Elijah's plans by killing or trapping him in the vault. Either way, he is destined to spend his final earthly moments in the heart of the Sierra Madre, where he thought all of his dreams would come true, but were dashed and struck down instead. In his own words, finding it wasn't the hard part.
It's letting go.
We first meet Christine in the villa's medical clinic. She was trapped inside an auto dock where it had been running her through a surgery routine for weeks repeatedly, carving up her voice box over and over until it made her unable to speak for some time after. Stim packs had run out after the first hour, so she had been feeling every bit of pain since. Every interaction with her during the first part of Dead Money is communicated entirely through text, through descriptions of her reactions and miming. I'm sure some cynical assholes will say that it's just lazy writing or the developers were cheaping out on having to book a voice actor, but I thoroughly enjoyed the novelty of an entirely text-based character. Of course, the game's animations are not nearly robust enough to handle specific facial animations or body movements to convey emotion or sign language, so it puts even more emphasis on the written explanations of Christine's emotions to understand her. It's super clever, and it's nice to see the developers get a chance to shake things up in more ways than just the gameplay. Christine made her way to the Sierra Madre in pursuit of Father Elijah, Christine is a member of the Brotherhood of Steel's Internal Affairs Division, called the Circle of Steel, and was tasked with hunting down the former elder who deserted them and left a trail of crimes in his wake. The mission was personal for her. Elijah is also responsible for breaking apart her relationship with Veronica. She eventually managed to track him down at the Big Empty, finding the rogue elder picking through the pre-war labs in the crater. Unaware to her, Elijah had noticed her watching him and staged an ambush. He lured Christine into his camp and had his ghoulified inmates wearing his bomb collars attack her. One of their collars exploded, injuring her. Robots brought her to the Big Empty's medical facility, where they helped her recover before performing several automated experiments, including operating on her brain and doing severe damage. But she got off luckier than most, as the worst of it came in the form of suffering from alexia. She struggles to read or write, but can still do math and calculations without issue. Others who were subjected to the same operations had become gibbering wrecks. Even still, it seems like she doesn't have the best luck with autodocs. Evidence of all this can be seen in the Old World Blues add-on for New Vegas, but Christine does mention the nightmare she went through while talking to her in Dead Money. She was rescued from further torment in the medical facility by Ulysses. After lengthy discussions with him about history and politics, which seems to be obligatory with him, she was told Elijah was heading to the Sierra Madre, so her pursuit continued. Christine was captured by one of Father Elijah's traps and fitted with an explosive collar. She had no choice but to aid her greatest enemy in his attempt to break into the casino. However, her troubles didn't end there, as she ran into Dean Domino, the pre-war lounge singer and another of Elijah's unwilling servants, who was also looking for a way to break into the casino. After luring Christine into the Villa Clinic, Dean trapped her inside a malfunctioning autodoc, using pre-war routines developed for Vera Keys. He set the machine to operate on Christine's voice box, surgically altering it to sound like Keys, so she could bypass the voice lock on the Madre's underground vault that would only recognize hers. Christine was initially not aware that Dean was the one that did that to her, as she assumed it was Elijah. When the casino's automated systems recognized Christine as Vera Keys, they brought her to the executive suites inside Vera Keys' old room. Christine used her time there to repair the damage done to her with Vera's properly functioning autodoc. She finally reached her target after a lifetime of suffering. She had lost him countless times, only to barely pick up the trail and then witness his horrifying crimes that make the Madre atrocities pale in comparison. She desires to kill him herself, to be sure the monster was slain. Her noble goal became an all-consuming obsession. She could not let go. If Christine lives beyond the events of Dead Money, she will take on a new role as the Sierra Madre's new warden, wandering the streets, ensuring no one could take advantage of it anymore. Then there's Frederick Sinclair and Vera Keys, the couple at the center of it all. In the times before the bombs fell, Sinclair was a prominent businessman with an arrogant, self-interested disposition. Despite weathering some financial setbacks, he maintained his fortune and developed an obsession for security. A mutual friend, Dean Domino, introduced him to the starlet Vera Keys, and he fell instantly and madly in love with her. He worshipped the ground she walked on and decided to erect the Sierra Madre Casino and Resort as his ultimate gift to her. As a shelter from the inevitable nuclear war brewing on the horizon, the vault buried beneath would serve as a bunker with Vera's voice as its key. It stands as both a monument and fortress for her. Her likeness is plastered everywhere he could shove it. One of her songs, Begin Again, is prominently featured and used as a constant refrain and thesis statement for the Sierra Madre, but things didn't pan out as he would have hoped. Sinclair discovered evidence of Dean Domino and Vera Keys' plot to break into the casino's vault and pilfer its treasures. Furious, Sinclair set a trap, asking the builders to design the casino so that the vault, once accessed, would be impossible to escape, as he knew the first person to enter would be Dean Domino. Vera had gotten cold feet about going forward with their plan. Despite Dean's threat of blackmail, she was overcome by guilt and confessed her betrayal to Sinclair. Although he no longer loved her and was left hollow, Sinclair could not bear to condemn her to wither away in a concrete tomb for all of eternity. So he returned to the vaults and attempted to switch the casino back to its original purpose. But this proved to be impossible. It had been built simply too well. His efforts to jury-rig the systems back to normal led to his demise. Messing with the pipes near the vaults, he was exposed to the cloud and succumbed to its toxins. His body can still be found near the holotape that would have been meant for Dean should he have fallen into the trap. That holotape was replaced with an apology for Vera. Of course, Vera never saw it. On the night the bombs dropped, the night of the grand opening gala, the casinos locked its doors and its security systems activated. Vera was trapped in her room with only one way out. She scrawled her last words, "Let go," on the wall before taking a lethal dose of the Med-X and super stim packs that she had been using to relieve her pain brought on by a terminal illness she suffered from. Her last words were recorded by the hologram security system and play on a loop through the projections bearing her image.
We all pay for what we've done. I'm so sorry, Sinclair. Sorry, I should have trusted you.
Like ghosts reliving her final moments for all time. The way I interpret the message of Dead Money is this: obsession, greed, betrayal. These traits are shared by everyone the Sierra Madre touches. The dark disease of corruption is just a human condition, and like the cloud, it's ever present and gnaws away at the living, but leaves dead matter untouched and preserved. It requires constant maintenance to keep at bay before irreparable damage is done. The Sierra Madre's ventilation system struggled to hold back the cloud until it finally transformed the resort into an unrecognizable hellscape. For Sinclair, Dean Domino, Christine, Father Elijah, Dog, and the countless others who found themselves at the feet of the Sierra Madre, it's no different. Their ventilation system, so to speak, also lost its battle with the corruption of obsession, greed, and betrayal, becoming another one of its vessels, seeking to spread that dark disease further and wider. Obsession has the unpleasant side effect of ensuring that business is never finished, that nothing is ever resolved, and that dead or alive, we haunt like roaming ghosts, desperately and futilely trying to cross a moving finish line. The only remedy is to let go, or I'll let Vera Keyes say it for herself.
Before you go, we hope you've enjoyed your stay. Farewells can be a time of sadness. Letting go, difficult. As a guest of the Sierra Madre, you know that truth more than anyone. Frederick Sinclair believed one's life could be made anew every day. That fortunes were more than the wealth in your hands. Love, life, family, those to care for, and those who will care for you. To those who know these joys, the Sierra Madre holds little they don't already have. Out in the world, beyond these walls, that is your chance to begin again. I hope you'll return in happier times. Until then, the Sierra Madre and I will hold you in our hearts.
Let me know if that's all total cringe-worthy buffoonery. It's my first time trying this. Anyways, thank you for sticking around for this video, if you did. I am trying something a bit different where I dive deeper and cover things in a way I haven't before, and I hope you enjoyed it. Dead Money is an immensely flawed and polarizing DLC. Still, for all the ways it falls short in terms of gameplay and environmental variety, it more than makes up for with a rich, engrossing story that is endlessly fascinating. I hope you can find the things around you that make you happy, healthy, and kind. Your darkest moments don't define you, and there's always a tomorrow. I'll catch you next time with some Fallout New Vegas Honest Hearts action. Have a nice day.